All right, and here I am being joined by my man Matt. What up, Matt?
What up, Jim?
What up? And we have Amazing Spider-Man number 36. Now, a bunch of dark and dangerous things have happened. Leading into this issue, you ended up having Peter take in the sins of Norman Osborn. You end up having some big things with Kraven. All this going to end last issue with what looks like the sins going back into Norman, possibly reverting him back to the Green Goblin. These big, dark things, right? So when you get this issue, I will read the solicit before we end up doing anything else. But the solicit says, Spider-Man has never gone this dark. Now the consequences are unraveled. Will New York ever look at him the same way again? Well, that's kind of silly to start with anyway, because that was kind of wrapped up at the end of last issue where you end up, I think it was Norman saying, thank God you were in that black suit because they'll blame it on whoever is Venom at this point. And we thought, oh, that's kind of bullcrap. But we'll see what we get. And the whole deal, just remember that the solicit for this issue says we're going to find out the consequences of all that darkness. That makes sense. You would think that we carry on by showing, oh my God, how is Peter going to end up going forward with all this? I mean, he ended up having those sins. He tried to kill Paul. Unfortunately, he didn't succeed, right? I mean, I was really hoping. But also, he attacked Mary Jane. He also did a lot of bad things. So what is going to happen with him? Well, Zeb Wells has, a different way of doing things. And again, this is Amazing Spider-Man number 36, and it is written by Zeb Wells, pencils by Ed McGuinness, inks by Mark Farmer, colors by Marcelo Menez, letters by VC's Joe Caramagna. So you know what we have here? The darkness continues. Oh, wait a minute. We get Rek-Rap. That's all we get. We end up in this issue that should possibly be the consequences of that awful thing that happened to Peter and what's going on with Norman. We end up having a jokey issue. Seems like part one of two of a jokey little tie-in. Rek-Rap Peter, and all it is dark web bull crap. And dark web is one of the things. Here's what I say. I know that some people probably did like the dark web story. I thought it was completely and utterly awful. It also ended 8 months ago. And to go into this and tie it into that limbo embassy that nobody has given a rat's behind about since, it just makes it feel like eye rolling. But also, why not have it? We were talking before we started. Why not have this where at the beginning it doesn't say Queens 2 nights ago because you're just setting up your story. Say Queens months ago. Have this be a story that at some point this kind of fit in between one of the issues before, and then we can get the idea, oh, this happened in the past. Okay, cool. We're having a little cool down, but it's kind of a flashback type deal. That would be fine because when you go into this, the tone shift of a Zeb Wells run, if not issues, it gives you whiplash. I mean, guy, I said, he is one of those jerk-offs who are at your mom and dad's funeral. Like, unfortunately, my mom and dad just died in a horrific car crash. And in this world, I actually like my parents. So I'm upset. And Zeb Wells will be the guy who'll be like, hey, you know what the last thing that went through your dad's mind? The windshield. And I grab him and punch him right in the face. Because that he reminds me of the guy who just can't get the tone. He can't read a room and ends up, hey, I'm going to be Mr. Jokey Fun Guy. That Jokey Fun Guy can go to hell. He can go to limbo himself because I'm so angry at this. We start off with Rek-Rap and he's there trying to do a little
Detective Rek-Rap.
It works okay. But all this is you think I'm what's his name. No, I don't. I don't think you're what's his name of what's his name of what's his name. Ha ha. I need to get to your attic and get these papers. And then voila, attacked by the Grave Goblin, which then just leads to more jokes when Peter goes to investigate this. And having Peter in this issue, I think, is a very big misplay. If you're going to do this, do Rek-Rap by himself. People want to see what happened with Peter and how he's reacting to all that darkness. Instead, you get just goofiness. And the other thing that I thought maybe what you could have done with Rek-Rap, because some people like him. You love Rek-Rap.
Yeah.
I'll tell everybody. I'm going to expose you. You like Rek-Rap.
Yeah.
Rek-Rap just reminds me of Dark Web. I get flashbacks, and I don't need those. I don't need sentient sandwiches. I don't need talking mailboxes. It was bullcrap. So when you get Rek-Rap, I just think of that. But if you're into a Rek-Rap story, there is a very, very good place to do it, in my mind. Infinity Comics. You have it on the app. You ended up having those Jeff, the land shark. You had an Infinity comic with him. You have a bunch of those Infinity comics. Why not just have an Infinity comic that is Rek-Rap and the Insidious Six? We were talking about this before we started recording. And then people could get their Rek-Rap fill. And then at the end, they do end up printing those and then kind of judge. Was this popular? Could we have this going on? But to throw it in here after that arc, it just throws you off. The solicit even, I mean, that's the idea. Solicits are often misleading. But to me, I just guess that it's, somebody in the editorial office going, okay, I don't know what he has, but it has to definitely be something showing the consequences of all that darkness. And then you get this. Yeah, and it's just crazy.
I think they just had this together and they just kind of slotted it in here. I think it was already done because even his costume, like we were talking about earlier, is the older costume. So this fits in like 6 months ago, maybe, in continuity.
Dark Web ended 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Maybe this was, if you think about things, and I know that they claim everything was planned, but maybe the whole Miss Marvel thing threw a wrench in things, and maybe this was supposed to be something down the way there. And it should have come out a little closer to Dark Web, even though I don't really need it overall.
Yeah, no, I hated Dark Web too. I think it's useless, but
as an individual issue, this isn't horrible, but where it lies in the run and what is recently happening, it actually infuriates me. But,
yeah, and the fact that they don't come clean about that it really doesn't fit in that timeline. It happened before, but they're not really saying that, which is annoying.
So you end up there at Limbo Embassy because the problem is after the Grave Goblin attacks Rek-Rap, things are going bad. Everybody's wrecking houses. House gets destroyed and people are upset. Because, again, there is the Limbo Embassy in New York. And you end up having Zeb Wells throw things in here just to make it feel like anybody cares. The idea where Luke has to go talk to Madeline Pryor. Oh, my God, what's up with this Limbo Embassy? You got to keep your people in check. There's going to end up being elections coming up. Woe is me. I need you to keep your monsters at bay. And she's like, yeah, I agree. But Rek-Rap, he doesn't really mean harm. But yeah, I'll go get him. We'll gather him up. This won't be a problem. And then in the meantime, you have jokes where Luke is there with Peter. They're sitting in little chairs. And the idea of it, though, is if I'm looking at it and me and you are talking and we say, oh, my God, it's so funny. She's put him in little chairs like he's a little schoolboy or something. That's funny. But Zeb Wells, though he thinks he's a funny guy, he always has to explain his jokes. He always does it. And if you have to explain your joke, then it's not a good joke or you're not confident in that joke. So you actually waste time explaining jokes when the visual should be enough to make you giggle. I mean, it's Luke Cage. He looks ridiculous. Even then, you have to show it a little better as well. You just kind of see a wheel underneath.
To me, it looks like a regular-sized chair, and Luke is just huge.
It just looks huge. What they should have done is almost have like a second-grade desk.
Yeah, one of those little school desks.
That would be funny. You're like, well, why are these here? But you end up all this going down now. As Peter is talking to Luke, now we're also going to throw in another thing that really gets left behind in so many books because it's one of those things in a comic. It's like the idea, why do you end up throwing things in a comic book to hamper every comic? Because this Fisk's Law, no masks allowed, it's hardly being followed by anybody. And when you end up why do that? It's like, I mean, if we're talking DC Comics where they always, the lantern rings don't work. Well, that's what I'm here for. No masks. Well, obviously, we're here for our masked heroes. And so it's been silly anyway, but they mention it. But don't mention it about Rek-Rap because he possibly couldn't take his mask off. But then,
what does he look like underneath there? Probably a monstrosity.
Then Luke starts saying, this Fisk Law. Peter says, can you please get that off the books? You're mayor. You could do something about this. This is the perfect opportunity for Zeb Wells to say, yeah, I'm working on it, and it will be off the books. Nope, Luke says, this is ironclad in. We're going to need a jackhammer to get out of that thing because it's tied in with infrastructure deal.
Paperwork, yeah.
Why? Because then he says, I can't be seen with you. You're an illegal hero. But by the way, you should go and work with this Robbie Robertson because you should do more. Like, he can't. You're setting up all these, roadblocks in this nonsense. Hopefully after gang war, they just end up like New York decides, yeah, screw that fiscal. Anything even with the name Fisk on it, just get it out of there,
it would have been a perfect I know it's covered in red tape and all that stuff and it takes forever in real life, but just say, I'll take care of it. It's done. And then we don't have to talk about it anymore.
And then when we end up seeing Daredevil run around, we could say, oh, my God,
Luke Cage
he must have taken care of that. When we see Spider-Man and he took care of it. That's all you need. Because we're still going to see them running around like that.
Nobody listens to it.
It just keeps happening. And if you have every book, it's just nonsense. It's just nonsense.
Like that Kamala's Law stuff.
I was just going to say, do what they did with Kamala's Law. They're just like, get rid of it.
Yeah.
That's
enough of that.
So we're going to set up a bit of the gang war then in an elsewhere where we get the head of Silvermane, and I mean the head of Silvermane, and he is yelling things to Hammerhead about how we're going to end up showing them, and we're going to get the Magia. They're going to be reborn. I'm going to get a body. I'm going to be great. And in that scene, all I can say or think is, gang war is going to be as bullcrap as Dark Web. It reminds, why isn't there any time where you could just be serious with something that could be bigger and better and a little more serious? Why are you always making jokes? Why with the jokes? And I know
this is a very Dark Web feeling. You're right.
Here's the thing, too. Spider-Man is quippy in a lot of dark stories. A lot of the actual stories get pretty dark, but that's what makes Spider-Man great. When he is actually fighting and he's going through the dark things, he can remain with his quips. He actually remains very positive. Don't tell me that Spider-Man hasn't had some dark stories, even the one we just ended. So please, you don't have to make the world a joke. Just let Spider-Man go through it with his quips and things is fine. But this ends up making me think, this is just ridiculous.
The first arc was with Tombstone. That was pretty dark. It wasn't. And then Dark Web hit, and ever since then, he's like, wow, I could be jokey and I don't have to take this seriously anymore.
And it feels like at points he thinks he's gone too dark, but isn't it the case where a lot of times when it has gone a little darker, people actually jump on board? People actually are like, okay, this is what I've been waiting for. Oh my God, this is cool. And then we get back to something like this. Again, it's just this side thing, but it is infuriating where it lays. Well, we then go and get Madeline, who's digging in her garden. She needs to get this guy, the repossessor, to go off and take care and gather up Rek-Rap and the Insidious Six. So that ends up happening, and it says, don't forget to put your face on. By the end, that's a mystery of who this might be. We don't see Ben Reilly at all in this, which is actually kind of a shock. We don't see Kaz and we don't see Ben. So is this possibly him in this weird form? I don't know. Maybe other people have some ideas, but that's kind of the weird play because this, whoever it is, whatever it is, does recognize Peter by the end. But before we get to that, we have to get Peter to find Rek-Rap. He goes to this house that ended up getting destroyed, and you jump back and forth with this. Hey, I'm not that guy who showed up. Yeah, you're not him, but him of them, and that. It just keeps going on and on about this guy just sweeping up a destroyed house with really no care in the world. I need this guy's Zoloft prescription.
He's way too low key to be having dealt with what he just dealt with.
Yeah, and it's because it's a joke. It's played as a joke. And finally, you do end up having Spider-Man meet up with Rek-Rap, who's licking the side of a building. That made me giggle, actually.
I mean, are they just making him Venom? I mean, what
that's what it looks like.
It's so odd. Weird. It's like,
and I just like him as the big,
why does he have a long tongue?
Spider-Man. I don't know. I like him because he's a demon type limbo thing. But I just like Rek-Rap as the dumb with a heart of gold Spider-Man that may actually be able to. And really, if you want to do something here, could you have done the play that Peter's in a dark place after what happened, just with the sins, that Rek-Rap kind of reminds him that it is kind of fun and cool. That I don't know. I'm trying to make it work, but they end up, joining up. He does his deal. And then all of a sudden behind Peter, oh no, it's Dr. Octoball.
At first I thought it was MODOK. I was like,
God. I did too. And then I thought, well, okay, it's a beholder from D&D. That's all it is. I'm like, okay, I play D&D, whatever. So you're going to have this fight, but there's really no need for it. It's just kind of a jokey fight again. And then you end up having this repossessor guy come from Madeline to collect them and says, hey, I'm here to take you back to Limbo, Dr. Octoball. No, not that. He ends up kind of morphing because at this point he looks like, I don't know, just like a little guy with this little newsy hat on.
Like a mime face?
Yeah,
kinda.
He looks like a mime face chauffeur.
Yeah.
Shows up, hey there, buddy. And he starts transforming back into kind of the form we saw.
Looks like the Little Shop of Horrors plant or something.
He opens up his mouth, and it ends up like, there you go, sucking him back into hell. It's like a hellish portal. You end up Octoball. The art's really good. They're all this. But he's like, no, don't take me. Then Rek-Rap, oh, no, he's going to take me too. And then Spider-Man's like, no, he couldn't. Really? Like, you heard what the plan was. Madeline had to collect all these, including Rek-Rap, and this guy shows up and says, Madeline Pryor, your queen. She begs to differ. I'm taking you. So obviously he's there also to get Rek-Rap.
Yeah.
And then Peter saves him. Peter stops this, even though it really all this is returning him to Limbo, and that's where he should be. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. This seems to just
you can't have him running around. He knows Peter's identity too, and he's a loose cannon. This guy.
Peter ends up saving him, but then at that point, you end up where this thing says, I know you. Again, that's kind of a weird, like Peter is more upset about that than it seems that he was ever upset about getting the sins of Norman Osborn. But what? How do you know me? And this thing goes away, he punts it, kicks it away, and then as it runs down the alleyway, scared, I don't know why it doesn't double back and just eat both of them.
Yeah, finish the job.
He then says, Parker, which that's a little more than just, I know you, Spider-Man. This is, I know you, Peter Parker. And it's almost like he's saying, like in Seinfeld, Newman, it's like Parker.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it ends, to be continued. And again, there's some kind of okay things here, but it is that overall tone going from what we just ended, really never really getting a resolution of what everything meant to, say, Peter, even Mary Jane, Norman, all that, to get into this jokiness. I think it's a big misplay, but if we're here to have it, there's a little bit of fun to be had. The art's good. It's really good, and it's cool, but this should have been somewhere else. This should have been something else.
An annual, even.
Yeah, an annual, because it is, I think, a 2-issue deal. So those two combined, annual, bada bing, bada boom, off you go. Could have been a fun deal. I think still get people let their Rek-Rap fill go in an Infinity comic, which may have been pretty cool. I mean, some of these things at the Infinity, if you read some Infinity comics, some things you're just like, oh, you're just telling more stories. There's nothing really special about it or whatnot. But there could be that space for something like a Jeff the Land Shark or Rek-Rap or things like that might have worked out better. But I'm worried again. I end up, every time I think that I'm starting to dig the Zeb Wells run, like, okay, this is what he really wanted to do. And then we're right back to Dark Web stuff, which is my least favorite of all of it. So what would you give this?
Overall, if you look at it like a single issue or single 2 issues or something, I'm probably about a 7. But if you add it in with the mix, like you said, I'm down to probably a 6 then. Just I get a little angered because of where it fits.
I'm a 5/5.
You are all weirdos.
Weird science is the revolution. Weird science is the revolution.